Today, we're starting a new series. It's Connections That Make a Difference. And so we have our dear friends, Lance and Darlene Bain. We have known these two for 22 plus years and have lived
so
life.
long we forgot.
I had to do the calculation.
I thought maybe it was 28. I wasn't quite sure.
It was a long time.
A long time. So we have had just life-giving relationships. We've raised kids together. We have been in ministry together, and
We've got in trouble together.
we've done a lot together.
Are we talking about that?
Just one time.
Few
No,
times.
no, we're not talking about that.
The biggest thing is the reason I wanted to bring them on is just the deep relationship that we both carry as couples and families. And so they have a lot of wisdom that I believe that they're going to share today. And Darlene's going to speak a lot about it as well. And so thank you guys both for taking time out of your busy schedules and coming and being part of this podcast with us today.
Our pleasure.
Thanks for
Thank you.
having us.
That's awesome.
Great. So one of the questions that we have is, and it's a big one. Obviously, we could talk about it a long time, but we have, a biblical definitions in our own mind. We were raised in, kind of church. We have some thought processes, and one of the challenges that I think the world has today is relating to Christianity there's a modernization that's happening, right? And there's all sorts of struggles. We're seeing, disconnections, arguments, unforgiveness, offenses. The world is full
Oh, yeah.
of negativity. But what we want to see happen is God's love demonstrated through us in our families because we believe they matter. So what do you think the role of marriage is and how does it impact things like parenting and business? What's the role? What if you had to just kind of
Sum
start
it up.
talking about that?
Right.
What is the role?
Right.
You can go first.
I think, well, like we were talking about earlier, for me, you don't want to be alone.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're just
Wow.
going to be, let's be honest.
Sure.
You want to go through life with someone. One of my favorite movies has a quote that they're talking about a marriage relationship, and the lady says, "I'll be the witness to your life."
Wow.
And for me, that made such an impact of, I'm not here to create any sort of feeling in him. It's not my job to make him happy but just to walk alongside of him, to witness everything, the big moments, the mundane moments, everything, but be the witness to his life.
Wow.
To say, I will walk alongside you for the rest of our lives.
That's powerful. That's so good.
Yeah, similar. I think everybody wants to know, are they loved? Does anybody care about me? Do I matter to anybody? Does anybody see me? Marriage offers a unique relationship, I think, unlike any other relationship, that you enter into a commitment where you remove all the exit ramps and you stay in it for the rest of your life until you pass away. And for us, we've been learning about the power of connection.
Wow.
I think in my years of ministry and marriage, 30 plus years with Darlene and I, and ministering to married couples, what comes up often is connection. When people don't feel connected, it creates a lot of bad habits, a lot of bad beliefs, a lot of self-medicating behaviors, and they live with an underlying sense of discontent or anxiety or an unsettledness.
That's good.
So for me, it's all about connection and being connected to each other and loving each other, saying, I see you, I love you, I care for you,
Yeah.
when life is really hard or when life is really great.
So when you say connection, I mean, people have different codebook words, right? What they define connection as being. What would you guys define connection looking like? Is that just communicating? Is that just being in the room? What is connection really kind of in your definition? I know everybody may have their own. What does that look like?
I think connection can be about communication. I think communication can help connection.
Right.
It's important to that. But I don't know if communication can create connection. I'm not sure about that one. I think connection for me is ultimately, I feel safe enough to be fully seen by the other person.
Yeah.
Emotionally, physically, spiritually, that if I'm angry or afraid, I feel safe enough to bring all of those emotions and thoughts and beliefs and freedom to say things that I know she won't take seriously.
Got it.
But by that I mean, I might say something kind of rash or irrational or too hasty. I can trust Darlene not to immediately like, oh my God, he's gonna.
Yeah.
She just knows she's creating that safe place to be the witness to this moment.
But did y'all start off your marriage like that? Or did you? Surely not, right?
Are you kidding?
I think,
There was a time in your early marriage where sex was enough.
That's probably true.
Really?
We're connected. When we first got married, we're connected.
That's true.
6
3
times.
times.
3 times.
6 times.
I confess my jealousy.
You better get your connection on.
Exactly.
6 kids, bless you.
Good.
man,
Thank you.
forever.
Thank
Bless
you.
you.
Thank you.
We're still
No,
alive.
I think for me, coming from a divorced home,
Yeah.
my parents divorced when I was 15, and that was very painful. And I knew that I didn't want to go through that ever again, ever. And so early in the marriage, it was like, what do I do to make sure that this marriage lasts?
Right.
Probably I was exploring things that weren't all that healthy. You know, if I never argue with him, if I never make him unhappy, you know,
Right.
all of those things. So I
Right.
didn't know how to feel safe. But it was important to me to feel close to him. So I remember early in our marriage, that's what we would ask each other. Do you feel close to me? Do I feel close to you?
Right.
Because we were, you know, you have different jobs and different, you know, and kids
Sure.
came fast for us. So everybody going in a different direction. And you're like, okay, I haven't seen you in a while, but do you feel close to me?
Right.
For me, it was more than just a head knowledge of, you know, we have the piece of paper, we have the marriage license, I have the ring. So we're connected, but do I feel in my heart that there's a bond here that's not fragile?
Wow.
Well, the paper says
good.
that you're committed to one another on
Right.
paper, but that doesn't define connection, right?
Yes.
The paper
Yes.
it could be just a contract, right?
Right.
And what do you-
Yes. Well, I was thinking back to our early days of marriage. It's romance, it's love, it's youthful love. I sometimes, you know, will say to Darlene, I think I was more in lust than I was in love when we got married. But I think that may be true for lots of young couples. You don't know what you don't know, and
Yeah.
you feel this something that I want to spend the rest of my life with you, completely ignorant of what the rest of your life means and what's going to come.
Yeah.
You know, the death of parents, health challenges, geographical moves, the loss of friends, of financial troubles.
Sure.
Those are all theories and thoughts, but when it hits the heart, when it hits the relationship, when you see someone you love
Yeah.
struggling and you can't solve that problem for them, you can only be present with them and walk that with them. I don't think anything prepares you for that. You just have to embrace it. You have to figure it out when you're in it. So I think the early years of our marriage was a lot about romance. As she said, we had kids very early. I then think about exploration. That there was a time at which we both became more self-aware of our own baggage that we brought into
Yeah.
the marriage.
Yeah.
That's good.
So, you know, to the degree that you can have strong connection, I think you have to have a lot of self-awareness.
Right.
Because the baggage you're bringing is going to be at war with the connection. Because your baggage is your family systems. It's the way
That's good.
if no one teaches you how to resolve conflict, you're going to resolve
Right.
conflict the way your mom and dad resolve
Totally.
conflict, right? You're just going to
Totally.
pass these things along.
Right.
So we had to learn a lot of new skills, which required a lot of self-awareness, a lot of humility, a lot of apologizing to each other. That's what I mean by exploration. Learning about ourselves individually and then learning about ourselves together. Then there's what I call the hard times, where the older we got, you know, my mom died of breast cancer. My dad came down with cancer. Her dad passed away. These are what I call my hard times.
Wow.
How do I love you when your dad died? I don't know. I've never been with someone like that.
Right.
So you figure out these hard times. You know, we moved to New England. We left you. We left a lot of friends. We're very hard
did
times.
leave us.
You did. But we're here today.
You
Okay.
are.
Boom.
I'm still working through that.
I see
And then
that.
I
10
feel
years
like
later.
I see that.
I feel like our marriage, there's a lot of ways to describe it, but I would say I feel like we've entered into a friendship phase where there's a sense that, you know, we've aged, we've gotten wiser, we've changed, our bodies have changed, our lives are changed as 50-someones now. There's a deep, deep friendship that says, I want to spend the rest of my life with you.
Yeah.
And, you know, in the 20s, it may be a lot about attraction and physical attraction and the idea of being in love. But when you've weathered these storms together, I think it just can build, you have to manage it well. But I think it can build a very powerful foundation for friendship and legacy that, you know, your children, our
Right,
children can
right.
look at that. I've said to our 3 kids, I said, would you please help me understand what it's like to have parents married 30 plus years?
Wow.
Because my mom
Yeah.
and dad divorced when I was a toddler,
Sure.
and your parents divorced when you were teen. Like, this is something your mom and I have never experienced.
Wow.
We have no idea
Yeah.
what
And
that
what
is
do they
like.
say? What do they say? What are their
They kind of blow us off.
Yeah,
They're kids.
yeah, I can imagine that's not a yeah.
Well, they don't know. They
They're
know
like,
what it's
I don't
not
know,
to not have.
I don't know. Okay, well,
It's
thanks
great.
for
It's
helping a
great.
brother out.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so what are some tools that you guys use to stay connected? I mean, is there a secret sauce that you guys have?
I think every marriage has its secret sauce. So what
That's
works
good.
for us may help another couple. It may not. There may be different things that another couple might need to do.
Okay.
I think part of our personality wise, we benefit by the fact that we're not highly emotional feelers. And so I'm speaking for you. I'm sorry.
Okay. If you get it
I
wrong,
don't-
I'll
Very
correct.
I don't think you are. You're coming
so
with it. Keep coming.
I'll correct you if you're wrong.
This is one of the
Sure.
things
He's
I'm
emotionally intact.
learning. I'm really working on only speaking for myself
I know,
because
that's
that's
so hard.
important. For myself, I'm not overly emotional, and needing, you know, the big acts of romance and that kind of thing to feel connected with him. For us, it's a lot about asking each other questions, not reading, not expecting him to read my mind.
Oh, that's so
or,
good.
Or know what I want
That's
because
so
you've
good.
been married to me for 32 years. It's
Please, for the love of God, please
just
tell
talked
me
about this
what
yesterday.
you want. It's just too easy for me.
If you'll just make it simple.
If
I'll
you
do it,
just
I
tell me
promise.
what you want,
What you need.
Yes.
and then I can dialogue as a powerful person to go, I don't want to contribute that.
Well, that's still I'm still
Right.
learning that skill. For me, I can I can kind of process what I think he wants, and
Yeah.
or and make decisions for him on his behalf. And so we were dialoguing yesterday.
do it.
Don't do that.
Don't
Just
bring it
let
up.
him have the power to make a decision.
Don't-
And just give him the information and let him make a decision if he wants to participate or not, and not assume, because we've been married, almost going on 28 years. I can assume a lot of how he's
yeah.
going to behave after being married to him for that long. But even after 28 years of marriage, I'm having to realize, okay, I can't assume. He's evolving, he's growing, he's
Yes.
maturing. He may
That's
decide
huge.
something
Yes.
so totally different than what I would expect him to decide to do. And I just got to give him that freedom.
Yeah.
And
So-
all of that she just said is filled with language that could allow me to think, what I just heard you say is these. And she can look at me and go, I never said any of that.
It's true.
Right?
It's true.
So, so the idea of being connected, to me, I'm listening to you. This is a lot of hard work. It's a lot of hard work, and so we start off with a piece of paper that looks like a contract, but we enter into what we call covenant, which is the commitment to keep
Yeah.
my love on toward you, regardless of how you behave.
Right.
That's good.
Because, well, go ahead.
I think, the word for me is intentionality. I have to remember to be always intentional about this relationship.
That's good.
For 32 years doesn't just happen. My goal is 75 years or more.
Yes.
We're
Right.
going to live until we're 95.
We agree.
That's
So,
right. That's right.
and I want it to be just as good when we're 95 as it was when we were 21.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I've always got to be intentional with him and not take this for granted. Like, oh, it's just we're connected. So I don't have to worry about that anymore.
That's good.
I heard a person say one time, if you
good.
plant tomato seeds, what do you get? And everyone says tomatoes.
Tomatoes,
And
yeah.
if you plant, spinach seeds, what do you get? Spinach. If you plant nothing, what do you get? And everyone says nothing. And the
not
speaker
true.
says that's not true. You get weeds. Because creation doesn't allow for a vacuum.
Wow.
It will fill it with something. So if marriages and couples, and even for folks that are watching who aren't married, you may not have a covenant spouse, but you have covenant friends. You have best
Good.
friends. You have siblings. You have people you run life with. These thoughts that we're sharing are as applicable there as they are in marriage. you have to be intentional about the seed you're sowing, because life will sow seeds whether you like it or not, and you're going to have to,
That's powerful.
I think, be mindful of that and put up walls around your marriage and boundaries to protect the marriage, but also because there are certain things that will eat at marriage that are not fundamentally bad, like busyness or productivity. Not fundamentally bad, but busyness and productivity left unchecked will be the deer that eats your garden. And you start to dislike value and productivity, or you start to receive so much from it that you forget the purpose of the garden. So
So good.
a fence is to say, I love this, I want to protect this, what we're growing is valuable, but I also love this and it has a place in the broader ecosystem of our life, and I don't want to hate that thing. So let's build a fence that allows that to be useful over there, and at the same time protect what we're growing inside the marriage. I think for us in 30 years, one of the greatest things we've done is self-awareness, of taking time to say, what are my values? What are your values? Define these values.
That's good.
What is our family systems and our origin that doesn't allow for these values to mature, that doesn't allow for these values to take root? Deal with those through inner healing prayer, which I know you can get through the Shiloh community, educating yourself, growing in skills, persevering through difficulty so you develop deep character. You have to name and identify these values, and you actually have to grow them and fertilize them.
That's good. Yeah.
Because that's what's going to create the culture. And then your practices and your beliefs and the tool sets, I think they're the byproduct of this.
That's good.
Because once you sort of label like, oh, she values alone time to recharge.
For sure.
And I value being with certain friends to recharge. And in the early days of our marriage, I didn't understand her aloneness.
Right.
And so I was jealous of however she was spending that alone time. Because I'm like, why are you spending so much time with that thing when you could be spending that time with me? Because I was ignorant.
Right.
I was ignorant of.
Right.
So now naming these values and identifying them, when she says, hey, I'm going to go upstairs, I know exactly what this is about. And I can support it and encourage it and water it and bless it without feeling like this thing is at war with the garden. Does that make sense?
It does. Yes.
So the tools are a byproduct of understanding the values. That's been our practice.
Yeah.
While also having the freedom, if, my need for alone time is becoming excessive. Maybe it's just I've got a lot of demands at work or dealing with children or whatever it is, and I'm really feeling like, oh, I'm so drained. But my spending time alone is becoming excessive. He has the freedom to come and say, are you doing okay?
Right.
We've worked really hard on this with him just being able to say,
Yeah.
do I have the freedom to be honest with you right now?
Oh.
I'm feeling
Oh.
you're being you're spending more time alone than you normally do. Are you okay? First of all.
Right.
And then, I'm not feeling as close to you as I'd like to be. I'm not feeling as connected to you. Could we maybe make a special time to go to lunch or whatever it is?
Sure.
But and then me letting my walls down and hearing that for what it is. He's not demanding or saying, I don't like what you're doing, but he's asking for time with me. And why would that be a bad thing? So
Exactly.
Yeah.
it's about compromise.
That's so
In
good.
the midst of the conversation, I'm around the Shiloh community, or just, maybe it's just Lawrence and Danielle, communicating, like the simplicity of God for me is about revealing his love. And the result of God's love invading drives out all fear.
Yeah.
So most of the time, if I'm reactive, I love being responsive. I would much rather respond
Right.
to the connection, the relationship, the job, the kids. I want to respond, but I spent a lot of my life reacting.
Yeah.
And the reality of that is that has to do with fears. And so when I'm listening to you describe connection, I'm listening to you have the ability to ask each other powerful questions. And the question you just asked, Darlene, I think is a massive question that I would guarantee you, if you polled 100 men in the 90s, they would say, I do not feel the liberty to be honest. So the question that I have is, how do we, and I'm not sure how to ask this question, because if we know that perfect love drives out all fear, theoretically the result of love should create security. And connection being connected, in my mind, has to help that. Can we talk just a little bit about that? Because I guarantee you, men are not going to say or not going to feel, even if the wife says, "Oh, yes, honey, be completely honest with me right now." And he's thinking, "This is a trap. I'm going to die. They're going to kill me. The cops are somewhere here."
Yes.
To be completely honest
Yeah.
requires a deep level of security in the relationship, right?
Yeah.
How can we get people to that place? Because I do believe that is a massive question, because the truth sets you free.
Wow.
I think for us, the way that evolved over time is you didn't say yes unless it was true. So there were a lot of times when the question comes up, "Hey, we need to talk about something. I want to share something with you. Do I have the freedom to be honest?" Is a lot.
No.
Is a lot about, are you in a place right now to hear something difficult?
Wow.
That's really what I'm asking.
Yeah.
So do I have the freedom? Will you give me the freedom to be honest? Is an invitation for whoever asked the question, is to evaluate myself.
Yep.
Am I in a place where is my love on?
Right.
Am I, can I fully say yes and be, so you have to, it's what he talks about is being self-aware.
Totally.
Where am I right now?
Yeah.
Am I still thinking about this problem from work, or
Am I frustrated? Am I
I'm about-
hungry? Am I
so all of
fatigued?
those things.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes you don't say yes. In
You know,
you
it's
got to have the
interesting.
freedom to say, "No, I'm not in a good place right now, but if you'll give me half an hour, I'll get a snack, I'll get a Dr. Pepper,
Yep.
and I'll be."
That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work to sit
Yeah.
down. And I will tell you, me and Lance doing that to each other, because he's a lot safer to be honest with than she is sometimes.
And I can recognize that. And I was going to bring up that point. I think a lot of times we discredit the fact that a lot of times for a healthy marriage, the wife needs some really great friends.
And the same thing for
and
the man.
mentors. Same thing
Right.
for a man that can really vent, that can really help process, that can connect to you, female to female, man to man, and really kind of understand and really encourage.
Yeah.
So you don't vomit all over your spouse and create this big blow up, but
Right.
have time to process and really have some challenging questions from whether it's a mentor or a peer or a friend
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's super valuable, and it's not something that I've been really great at doing myself. And a lot of it has to do with the baggage that I grew up with. How do I grew up very independent, so if
my family's gonna fail me,
nobody's
nobody's gonna
I'm
help
gonna
me.
be successful, I'm all on my own. I'm gonna do it all myself. So learning to rely on friends was a skill I had to
Sure.
had to learn how to do. But in that, it is a place to process. Am I being unreasonable, Danielle, in
Right.
this? This is, I want to talk with Lance and I'm feeling this way, but help me out here,
Right.
Yeah.
and processing some of that. And then hearing, "Oh yeah, I have that same struggle." And here's one of the things that was helpful for us, or,
Yeah.
just in that
Yeah,
processing.
I would just say this though, just specifically, just in my relationship with Lance, and I have a couple other friends that I would say hold the same values. I need him, and I've said this to him before. I need you to be faithful to your wife. I need you to stay engaged in your marriage, because to me that brings safety. Is because if I start bleeding at him, and we've done this to each other, he can hold it, encourage, and then he's going to come back later and go, you can't quit, right?
Right.
Right.
And what do you need from me?
Right.
So I've got to know, because if he turns around and goes, well, maybe you need to think about a divorce. Maybe you guys just can't work this out. I can't ever imagine that coming out of his mouth.
never.
He would
right?
never say that.
You'd never say that.
But also he would expect the same thing from me. And I will tell you, that is not the same thing that the world is producing right now, which lead what happens though, that availability to use the marriage relationship as a contract. Well, we'll just quit. We'll just quit. And if you say that in a church today, you got tons of people that have been divorced and happily remarried. Well, they immediately have to deal with those thoughts. Or if you say it to young people who are struggling, like, we need safe people, whether you've been divorced and remarried or not.
Right.
The idea is that if you're in a marriage relationship right now, the connection produces love, and the love drives out fear.
That's right.
And to be secured one with another will actually position you to make better decisions in every way of life. Your children, so I say this often, the security of our relational equity in our marriage and in our friendship will actually create secure children. So a lot of times, if I come into a scene where I see children just really
Wreaking havoc.
struggling
Or
to
emotionally
be
upset.
anchored
Yeah.
to any type of
Yeah.
whatever. You can get the idea. I usually want to go to the parents and go, "How are you doing?" Right? From a deep, genuine concern, what's happening? And I can guarantee you there are things going on in that household where the marriage relationship is not secured, or the children are not hearing
Right.
skilled communication. Committed parents. I cannot be afraid you're going to divorce my dad.
Right.
Yeah.
Because when I become afraid of that, then my brain takes me into different places. Now I don't know what to do. What happens? Well, how would I live? Now
Yeah.
I'm vain imagining. Well, am I going to go live with mom or going to go live with dad? That's taking that child into so much anxiety and stress. And then, in my opinion, the demonic wreaks havoc on that and starts to separate families. So the connection from the love of God, to me, is one of the most secure places that we can be. And I'm committed to that. I'm committed to that. And I mean, at this point, I'll die. Like, I'm not going to, there's no intentionality in my brain that makes room for quitting
That's right.
the marriage.
So, we're going to end the podcast in a few minutes. Would love to hear your thoughts kind of on what we're dialoguing, Lance, and kind of wrap this up and kind of some highlights of what your kind of some takeaways and.
The early days for us, we're learning these things. And I don't know, I just try to get down to the iceberg below the water. What is that? And what is underneath that? Because that's affecting things. And if I ignore that, I'm going to continue to keep sort of going around the same mountain over and over and over. And I think the older you get, the more you start to realize how short life is. And you start to recognize, this is the only one I've got. I'm not immortal.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And do I want to be in my 70s or 80s or 90s facing my death with a lot of bitterness and regret about my life? That seems like an unbearable burden to me emotionally. So that drives a lot of love towards her, love towards our kids, and exploring what's beneath the iceberg. And then being that place that hopefully we've role modeled something to our kids, our failures, our mistakes, our successes, the things we've learned. And now having, 2 older children that have kids, and our youngest just graduating high school, so we have 3 grandkids. Now it's about being positioned as consultants, if you will. Watching their marriage and being available if they have questions. Or I know Darlene and our daughter are like great friends. And in some ways she comes and processes that with Darlene and just
For
can
sure.
vent.
Right. Right.
Because, hey, you're my mom and I know you love me and you're for me, but also you've been where I'm at.
That's so good. Yeah.
And you've
And
somehow...
she ain't quitting.
And she's
No.
not quitting. And you've navigated this. And
I'm not letting her quit.
And I see you, and I see you and Dad having something that I hope me and my husband can attain
Wow.
as well.
That's good.
So I think it's learning to be consultants, which may be the hardest thing of all,
Yeah.
because you deeply want things for your children. They don't always make those decisions or hold those values, or they're just, to be honest, prideful. They think they know it. And
Right.
somewhere between now and 40, they're going to realize they don't know it.
That's true.
And
Adventurous.
It could be a little confidence.
They're
wanna-
adventurous.
I like confidence, but arrogance is not going to do well for them. So it's sitting back patiently and just praying and loving and laughing and asking a couple of good questions, but really just sitting like hovering, knowing the Holy Spirit is doing things in your children.
Right.
And when it pops up, be ready to
That's good.
speak into that, to
That's
love
right.
that, to
That's right.
encourage that, because they have their own journey that they're navigating now.
Right.
It's just constant change, don't you think?
Yeah.
Marriage has just been one constant
It's
change
shocking,
after
isn't
another.
it? Yes.
You learn each other. Ooh, kid popped up. Change. Another kid. Oh, they're not like the first one. This is totally different. Another change. it's constant change.
That's good.
But there's a joy in it, and I love you, Darlene.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. I think what hopefully you'll hear from us is, in everything that we do at Shiloh, we want to process what it looks like to accurately represent the love of God in the earth. And in our struggles, in our trials, in our times, we're always trying to represent that to the best of our abilities. And sometimes that looks like allowing people to see our failures. Failure is not fatal unless you're ready to just give up. And so I want to encourage you as you're processing. We'll be shooting more videos, processing marriage. Marriage is tough. It's hard. Communication is difficult. But if your whole hope is in the fact that God loves you.
That's right.
And he loves you so much, he sent his son to demonstrate that love. We want to encourage you to think through that, and it actually matters for you learning how to love someone else. And a marriage is a great place to practice learning how to love. Thank you guys so much for joining us.